Hey everybody, this is Cannaday, and today I'm taking a look at MojoMania, the scenario pack for Marvel Champions. Let's get into it. Alright, so here's everything that comes in MojoMania. You have your three villains, Magog, Spiral, and Mojo themselves. You also have a standalone little module here, which is Longshot, which we'll talk about. It's not like a normal module, but it's just one character that's actually an ally, so that's pretty cool. And then you have your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 other modules here that are all different themes, kind of like different wheels of different thematics that you can have of different scenarios and stuff like that. We'll talk through all of this stuff and kind of see. I normally don't go into too much depth on the villain stuff because I know people really like to discover and uncover it for themselves, but just talk a little bit about how each of these work. So Magog here is super interesting. So basically the way he works, instead of winning the game by defeating him, you win the game or lose the game based off of these rating counters that will end up going on either the champion environment, which means that Magog is getting the favor of the crowd, or the challengers environment. So each time you defeat Magog, like normally you would defeat a villain and go to the next stage, well here you're going to defeat him and then you're going to put 3 rating counters, or 3 per the number of players ratings counters on the challengers here, meaning that the good team is doing it. And this will start on the booing crowd. So they're booing for you. If you have at least 5 here, it'll flip over. If you get at least 10, then you're going to win the game. Also, when this flips over, it's going to kind of help out the villain side. And then you have the champions thing here. And it'll start with the booing crowd booing for the champion. And then if he gets at least 5 here, they're going to start cheering for him. But when this flips over, each player is going to get to draw a card. And if this gets to 10 on this side, then he will win. How does he get the counters on here? Basically, each time he activates, he's going to be placing 1 rating counter on there. Also, a lot of things are going to be adding rating counters depending on his encounter deck there. Also, if the main scheme would be filled up, this is only 6 per player, instead of actually losing the game, you're going to reset the threat here, and you're going to put 2 rating counters on the champion. So if the threat starts getting out of control, or if each time he activates against you, he's going to be doing a bunch of things, and the crowd's going to start cheering for him. So you have to basically take out Magog over and over again, and do different things to basically make it so that the crowd is cheering for you instead. Definitely a very interesting scenario with a bunch of course, encounter cards and treachery cards to beef him up and boost him to kind of help him do all the things he wants to do to get the counters himself. There's also a surprise contender in there that popped out on me when I was playing the game and does very similar things to Magog himself. Lots of interesting things that can happen as you're playing the game against Magog. In the Spiral villain scenario, you're basically trying to find and hunt down Spiral in between all the different worlds that Mojo has set up for basically the show to go on in. And you're trying to hunt them down and actually be able to damage them and take them out so you can actually talk to them. So this is Spiral here. The crazy thing is Spiral cannot take damage or be stunned. Threat cannot be removed from the main scheme while Spiral's on this side. So you might say, how in the world can you even do anything? You can see here that also when Spiral would attack, Spiral schemes instead. If you get to 15 on this, then the stage, you lose the game. This is kind of interesting because you can't hurt Spiral when they're in escaped form. So how do you find them? This search for Spiral's side scheme starts in play, and this is force response after the threat is removed from here. You put 3 on here per player. You basically can take the current event from the show deck here and put it on the bottom and then reveal the next one. If you get the escaped one, then you will end up, so you flip through, now we're in the West, we started in a crime scene show, and then we would flip over, cornered. So that would end up flipping Spiral's side to the other side here. You can also remove 3 threat from the search for Spiral by taking 2 damage on your hero. So you're able to kind of go through there. And then once Spiral is cornered, you can actually do damage to Spiral again, and then basically after Spiral activates, you'll place a teleport counter here. If there's at least 3 teleport counters there per player, then Spiral will escape and be able to run away again. You'll have to flip this back over, and then this will have shuffled in, and there'll be new environments on the deck, and you basically have to go through all the different worlds again, which these worlds all have different abilities, like basically affecting kind of like an environmental thing, affecting each player has +1 hand size, and then there's extra boost icons for all the cards. This one is, in sight, So all the cards are going to put extra threat on the main scheme, and everybody gets extra thwart. So lots of different things that can happen based on the shows. And you're going to start with different shows because there's all sorts of different shows and themes in the that come in this scenario. But if you're able to actually knock Spiral out of the stages based off of the difficulty you're playing on, then you're going to be able to win the game. You lose the game, of course, if there's too much threat here. So this is all about hunting through, finding Spiral, flipping through all of these different worlds. There's going to be 3 different worlds basically shuffled into her encounter deck, and then she's going to have a bunch of things that are going to, of course, help her be able to escape again, do a bunch of extra damage to you, and things like that. So lots of teleporting, getting away from you, trying to hunt her down because she's shape-shifting and jumping away from you. So yeah, that's the search for Spiral. That's the Spiral villain. And then the last one here is Mojo themselves. So Mojo's whole thing is they start with MojoMania here. We're revealed, choose a set-aside encounter set at random. Reveal its show environment card, shuffle the remaining cards into the encounter deck. So basically hopping in between different worlds and things like that. You'll start with a number of them set aside based on the number of players. And then when a character flips or leaves play, remove all threat from that character's to this scheme. And then if the scheme's complete, then you lose the game. Mojo's going to be doing a bunch of stuff to put threat on characters. It'll put threat on characters, threat on your heroes. Then as your heroes flip, they're going to be adding that threat to MojoMania here. So causing it closer and closer to losing the game and keeping you from flipping your hero over. Also, when the entire deck, they start with a pretty small deck overall, and when that deck runs out, you're going to put one of the set-aside schemes into play. Maybe it's sci-fi, maybe the fantasy ones, depending on which ones you had set aside at the beginning of the game. And that'll be shuffled in. And then if that goes through again, you could end up losing the game if there's no more sets to be shuffled in based on the ones that you started with set aside. But yeah, Mojo is all about adding that threat to your characters and you being forced to not flip them over or having allies that end up getting different threat put on them and having to not get rid of them because they're going to end up putting a bunch of threat on this MojoMania. You will note that it's 25 per player to lose the game, but you start with 10 per player on there. So there'll be plenty of threat that you're going to be needing to remove from this to be able to win the game. And of course, Mojo has decently high hit points themselves. And of course, when they're revealing stuff, they're going to be putting more threat on your characters. All about adding threat to that main scheme and messing you up. Also, while changing the wheel of genres there and adding all sorts of crazy, wacky genres. Speaking of all these genres, let's take a look at how these genres work. All right, so we're going to start with sci-fi here. So you have Mojo Runner, which is going to give each ally and minions toughness. Lots of cool stuff there. And we have robotic toads and blobs and pyros and avalanches and magnetos, all different crazy robots. And then the Asteroid M, basically all this cyberpunk, different characters. Lots of minions in here that you can face off against. Basically the brotherhood of minions that are all robots. Pretty crazy there. Then you have a Western themed one, which this is the environment, the show here. And then you have the Gunslinger. I think this one was pretty cool when it came out. It has Quick Strike, but as a Force Interrupt, when it engages you, you can spend 2 lightning resources. If you do, you deal damage to it equal to your hero's attack. So you could end up quick drawing against the Gunslinger and knocking them out before they could hurt you. That seems pretty thematic. Game of Cards, a treachery that can mess you up, making you draw cards, lots of crazy stuff. Card Shark, a wanted poster, another Gunslinger in there. So giving you that Western feel. Then we have fantasy in here as well. This is the Game of Mojos, increasing your hand size. Then you have trolls and mana drains. And this dragon is terrifying. Retaliate 1, toughness 10 per player. Double the amount of damage that you can do to the dragon if you use a card with a printed lightning resource. Then if you defeat it, each player draws 4 cards. So you slay the dragon, you're going to be a hero. Then more goblins there. The cool thing about the goblins is they can only be attacked, not cool, well, annoying thing about the goblins, but still kind of cool, with people with the fighting resource. It has to have that card, that icon on the card, but then you get to remove 2 threat from a scheme when you beat it. Then there's the crime thing here. This one's really annoying. The Dragnet means that you can't attack the villain, or the villain can't take damage, but you can basically spend the fighting resource to basically fight through that. Lots of finishing stuff that's all very crime-themed. Law and Order. Lots of wacky stuff here. Then you have the horror setting, the Mojo Files, with a Kraken and lots of different stuff. Werewolf Pack, cultists that can mess you up, vampires, lots of interesting stuff there. And then you have the sitcom pack here. This is a bunch of obligations. Each obligation gains accelerate 1 icon, so all the obligations end up wrecking you a bunch. It decreases your ally limit. Lots of different stuff that messes you up in different ways that you can end up exhausting your identity to get rid of. This one's kind of funny. It's very like outside of the box. It's Insight 3 and Peril. When you look up a rule, you are confused. Exhaust your identity and discard the confused status and discard this obligation. So basically a card that, hey, if you have to look up rules, you end up having to take extra consequences. And then the one with the breakup, making you discard cards from your hand to be able to do stuff. Lots of interesting stuff that makes it all, oh, it's a drama and different things like that. So yeah, these all add different flair and theme to the different stuff and make for the wackiness of MojoMania. And then the last card here to talk about is Longshot. So Longshot is a module in and of himself, but he doesn't count for other modules. And the rulebook says you can add him into your games, and when you draw him as a activation for the villain, he has 0 boost icons, so that helps you out there. And if you draw him as an encounter card, he just comes into play as an ally on your team. It doesn't count against your ally limit, so Longshot just pops in and helps you out, which makes sense for the whole Mojo verse, and also adds a thing to the game that you can always add in if you want your games to be a little bit easier. I will say also the campaign or the scenario pack here has a campaign in it, which you can go through, and as you do different parts of the campaign, you'll be able to put upgrades into play based on how well you did and things like that. So you can kind of play through a little story here. I played through this. It was pretty fun going through all the different stuff, going against each villain back to back and kind of saving over. And you have your campaign log there on the back of the book. So it's pretty cool that the scenario pack has a mini campaign inside of it with just the 3 villains there. So MojoMania and the whole like comic book series and the cartoon and stuff around MojoMania and like Mojo in I remember watching the cartoons with Mojo in them and just craziness of the X-Men being transported to this Mojo world and then all these different sitcoms and shows. It's all super zany. But for how zany that stuff is, I feel like this scenario definitely makes you feel that and kind of like represents that very well. And it does end up being fun overall with all of that stuff. I like the whole champion thing with the Mogog where there's different people cheering and you have to like defeat him over and over again to kind of like win the favor of the crowd. And it just makes for an interesting different way to play where each time he activates against you, he's building up his favor. And then the more times you defeat him, you're building up your favor. It just makes it for a little bit different gameplay there. And then Spiral with the whole different aspect of teleporting away and trying to find her. It really does feel like you're trying to hunt and chase her down as you're running through these different worlds. And she has a bunch of those different crazy zany worlds mixed into her encounter deck. So you could have dragons and trolls and Western people coming after you. So all different crazy stuff coming up against you as you're playing against her and trying to hunt her down. And then you're just trying to figure out how to best take her out. And then the whole Mojo thing with the different tokens coming out on your characters, making it harder for you to flip. I feel like if you're playing a character that wants to flip back and forth a ton, that could be terrible for you because you're going to end up adding a bunch more stuff to the main scheme there, meaning you're going to have to thwart the threat a whole bunch more so that Mojo doesn't take you out. But if you have a character that can kind of stay on their hero side and be able to knock stuff out, it's not going to be nearly as big of a deal to you. But I did really enjoy this overall. I do feel like it's kind of different and zany. I do love the fact that it came with that campaign in there. It was actually a lot of fun to play through, and the fact that the campaign allows you to keep different upgrades in play, that's a cool way to do it without adding those extra cards that they normally have in campaigns that you get in between game to game, but still allowing you to have things that you carry over from game to game. And the better you do, the better a card you can kind of put out in play. But there's also the fact that you end up having to put a little bit of extra threat on the main scheme, so a little bit of give and take with that as well. I definitely enjoyed this overall. I think that it's not necessarily the first thing I would grab for Marvel Champions, but if you're into Marvel Champions and you have everything already, I do think that it was fun to play with. If you want to have those zany modular sets to add in, some people like crazy kookiness in their games, and some people want their stuff to be more serious. You know who you are as a player, whether or not that's going to work for you. I think this was really fun to play through, but overall, I think I'm going to give this a 7. It's not the highest thing I've rated Marvel Champions. I love Marvel Champions, and I think this is one of the things that would be lower on my list to get, but I did really enjoy it, and I do think it's well made and fun. So if you are looking for a zanier or kookier or more fun thing to play for Marvel Champions, definitely check out MojoMania. I think you'll still enjoy it and have fun with it. It's definitely well made and it's a lot of fun. And definitely fits the theme for the whole Mojo world. They did a great job with that, making that flavor come through. Anyway, I love Marvel Champions. I'm still loving everything that's coming out for it. I'm really excited to try out even more of the new X-Men heroes and things like that. So let me know below what characters you would love to see. What villain would you love to face off against? What hero is not in the game that you would love to play with? Tom was telling me he really wants Strong Guy to be in the game. Even though he doesn't play Marvel Champions. He should. He would like if he actually played it. Anyway, I hope you're having an awesome time, and let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this review. Anyway, I've been Roy Cannaday, and I'll see you on the next one.